Hey everyone, Ben Coomber Radio. How on earth are you doing? Today is it's a segue. Yes, it is a segue, and it's something that we haven't actually talked about for a while. In the early days of the show, we ranted a lot about it. People talk about it a lot on the DL in gym culture, and the last person to talk about it on the show was David Crossland, a big proponent of kind of understanding and being aware of safe steroid use. And if we're honest, we all know people that are potentially doing it in the gym. It's something that's been popularized in the media because there is a huge amount of people, and I would probably say that maybe this should be the perspective of 100% of people, but a lot of people want clean sport. They believe that clean sport should be a thing, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. So I should probably introduce my guest. So my guest today, Callum Skinner, former Team GB cyclist. Hello.
Hello, how are you doing?
Mate, I am awesome. And with your kind of association with the UK Anti-Doping Association, your kind of title is you are part of the Athlete Commission, which is an elected commission to kind of give advice into what is happening kind of in the world of sport, what they're planning to do in terms of policy, and I suppose the information that then going to put out to the general public.
Yeah, for sure. We're an appointed commission, which is actually really good for getting a broad spectrum of people on board. So we've got a kind of younger student who's doing a lot of research into anti-doping. We've got a former, a retired now, but former drugs cheat on the panel as well. A mixture of Paralympic and Olympic athletes, some kind of grassroots level athletes as well. So it's a real mix, and I think that's what makes us quite effective as a body. Is we're trying to give that athlete perspective as much as possible to UK anti-doping, because I think organisations that deal with athletes that have a direct, voice and a direct input tend to operate a bit better.
Sure. So before we delve into the massive world of steroid use, I'd love to know a little bit more about your background. You're a very talented athlete. Give us a bit of your background in the sport and kind of where you've got to today. I'm fascinated.
No, sure. So I guess in a nutshell, uh, a guy probably right after 2012 Olympic Games, and it became quite clear that there was a gap in the market for the GB to try and fill his shoes, and it was going to be some task to do it. We've had a really good kind of legacy in kind of Olympic track cycling. Every single athlete we've sent to the games, bar one, since the 2008 Olympic Games, has come away with a medal of some colour. So it's a really big deal just to get your jersey on your back in the first place. So we had a bit of a rocky road on the way there. A couple of months before the Olympic Games, we finished sixth in the team event, which is by all measuring standards, a disaster. But luckily we managed to kind of turn it around to beat the world champions, claim an Olympic record, and win Olympic gold alongside two of my best mates and reigning Olympic champions, Jason Kenny and Philip Hines. So it was a real kind of like whirlwind to that point. It'd been the kind of sole focus of the last 10 years. But then I kind of took the unusual decision to retire. So it's a funny thing being the GB team. It's all about Olympic medals. Everything else kind of falls by the wayside. It's all about winning the Olympic Games. And then once I'd done that and kind of surpassed all expectations, I kind of thought, well, do I keep going or do I try something new? So now I'm trying something new, which includes stuff like athlete representation with UK anti-doping. But my main kind of purpose at the moment is I work for a sports nutrition company, Science and Sport, and trying to make a bigger deal of how their supplements are tested and safe to use if you're on a testing regime as an athlete.
Nice little segue. Have you made that segue because you were always interested in sports nutrition? Was it just a good opportunity that came up? I know Science and Sport have a heavy involvement in cycling, so there's probably a lot of connections and connections you've made with just good people.
I guess I'd used their products through my entire career, and I was quite fortunate in the fact that because I was using them, I didn't really have to think about what I was taking, as long as I stayed within that family of products. And the kind of more research I've done and the more involved I got with UK anti-doping is that you find that the cowboy industry. There's all kinds of guys who chuck all kinds of ridiculous claims on various different supplements, and it trips people up occasionally. And from an athlete perspective, I think that's really damaging. So I'm pretty proud to be working with a company that takes its responsibility to provide non-contaminated, effective, clean supplements to athletes.
Very important. A lot of people have obviously come foul of supplements that have not been tested by not doing due diligence, and there's plenty of stories in the media where people have blamed it on supplements, and maybe it's kind of been that kind of scapegoat. Oh, my coach gave it to me and this happened, and I grabbed something off the internet. And the reality is, if you're an athlete, you need to be doing that level of due diligence, because it's really, really, really important to your career.
Yeah, you do, but it's amazing how few don't. So, that's another thing you can go to the UKAD website for, is to get the resources you need to make an informed choice about what you want to use. You can also kind of check all your medications to make sure that you're not going to fall foul of that. I mean, it's the world of anti-doping is so hideously complicated. So I'd love to be able to give like a simple explanation as to how to not trip up. But the truth of the matter is that athletes, especially if you're tested, you need to do your due diligence and research. Otherwise, you could end up slipping up, and that'd be a real shame if it was for a genuine mistake, and not what you're saying, where it's quite an easy thing to blame it on as a supplement. So I agree with you that sometimes we probably see athletes jumping on that bandwagon as a convenient excuse, but it doesn't wash. You still get a ban.
Yeah, the facts are the facts. So UK Anti-Doping, UKAD have just done another report, and that was what stimulated this chat together today, to kind of support the awareness around steroids as a whole, steroid safe use, because the reality is we could sit here and say, you can get great results with your body and your performance without taking steroids, and that will wash with some people, and some people will sit there and go, but I want more, I want to take it. And do you know what, the reality is, we have to sit here and go, that's absolutely fine, it's your choice. On a personal level, it's your choice. If you're not competing in sport, then in theory you're not doing any harm in terms of your competition, if you're doing it for your own personal reasons. But the key thing that we have to all appreciate there is there's kind of safe use, and there's a lot of people that have reported, having a lot of side effects. The statistics is actually quite high. Callum, in your experience, what have you seen in the world of steroids and the kind of side effects, or do you feel that in your environment you've actually been a bit shielded from that? Because I can imagine if you were around people that were taking steroids, they'd probably be doing it in the right way and maybe not suffering as many side effects.
I guess given that I've kind of quite recently retired, I've kind of stepped out of that very sanitized, protected environment, and it was something that, like, I hadn't been to a public gym in, well, I kind of occasionally had, but not properly been to a public gym for about 10 years. And like, it's actually quite shocking, I think, when you go in and you see the size that some people can get to, and you automatically have to question, is that natural, I guess. Because, I feel a bit, I don't know, I feel like I can't really answer your question as to what responsible steroid use looks like, because, to be honest, my interaction, with people who have allegedly taken steroids hasn't happened in my sporting career. It's happened when I was public. And I think that's why you feel like trying to shine a light on this. I don't know enough about the topic. If there's a safe level of steroid use, I think it's just a bit of a guessing game, it seems, on the whole. And and I think if you get to the point where, especially if people are injecting and stuff like that, that's a pretty sorry state of affairs. And does it really matter that much that you get that big? It's kind of my stance on it. I know other people have got different opinions, and I know they're obviously easily available on the internet and stuff like that, and maybe people think they're doing it safely, but the advice from UK Anti-Doping is just to not really take the risk, and maybe examine why you feel the pressure to do that, to take those kind of steps in the first place, because buying non-medical grade steroids off of the internet and injecting them into yourself isn't what I'd really categorise as normal behaviour, to be honest.
We'll get onto that in a second. I want to read
Yeah.
a little section of kind of the press release from UK Anti-Doping. So the report that's just been done for Clean Sport Week found that a third, 34%, of gym goers said they were aware of other members of their gym taking steroids, while nearly a sixth, so 14%, knew someone suffering from the side effects of steroids. So that's quite high when you think about it. Around 14% confirmed that they had taken steroids at some point, with a quarter of that, 27%, still currently using. The most well-known steroids are testosterone. See, you can tell I don't operate in this market. I don't even know what all these names are. Nandanolone and stanzolol, which are frequently injected. Regularly taking anabolic steroids can lead to physical and psychological changes in both men and women, as well as potentially dangerous medical conditions such as heart attack, stroke, liver and kidney failure, high blood pressure and blood clots. Anabolic steroids are a Class C drug which can only be sold by pharmacists with a prescription. It is not illegal to have anabolic steroids for personal use. So the numbers there are pretty high. And when I think about actually my interaction with kind of modern gym environment, there's definitely a lot more younger people taking them, because when I think about my involvement in sport and just gym culture, and the amount of muscle that we could put on when we're at uni, going to the gym 4 days a week, pumping iron as mates. Now people are like twice the size, and you're like, whoa, like where did that come from?
Yeah.
And it's interesting. So what do you think has spurred the kind of cultural change? Is it the fitness industry as a whole? Is it what we're promoting? I'm fascinated in your perspective.
I think maybe from a sporting perspective, there's obviously been quite a lot of pressure in rugby for kids to get big young. But I think there's a lot of like stones that they probably haven't overturned before they get to the point of taking what I really call a shortcut steroids. Like are they taking 8 portions of 20 grams of protein through the day? Maybe not. Like are they kind of working out maximally? Maybe not. I just feel like it's become a bit of that kind of quick fix culture where you take steroids and arguably you're going to see some pretty big mass gains. But again, I just through my whole sporting career, I think I've kind of always looked at anti-doping a little bit differently. For me, it's not necessarily about a fair play issue; it's about a health issue. And cycling has seen deaths on the side of the road where people have pumped themselves full of amphetamines or stimulants or whatever. And that's why I kind of really try and push the argument against what some people would call a doped up Olympics. It's like we can't control anti-doping, so why don't we just have a doped up Olympics? And the simple answer is because we'll see deaths. And for me personally, I value my health above any kind of sporting result. And I hope that a lot of people, hopefully listening to this, will kind of value their health above any kind of aesthetic result as well. And if you're not coming to that conclusion, then again, maybe there's a kind of slightly deeper issue there that needs to be examined. But I don't know, maybe it's just this kind of like shortcut culture that makes people think if I take steroids, then I'll get big, I'll get a contract with a rugby team, or I'll get more respect in the gym or something like that. To be honest, I find it quite puzzling a lot of the time.
Mm. So in your career, you said that you came from almost quite a sanitized, almost a safe and protected environment. Was there never on your journey kind of like, I don't know, coaches or people or friends or family that were like, oh, why don't you just do it? Everyone else is, or a handful of people are, like, you could get your medal quicker. Did that come about in your sporting environment?
No, genuinely not. And I know that British cycling has had its fair share of kind of scandals quite recently, I guess, whether that's over kind of misuse of TUEs or other things that have been going on with her previous doctor. But to me, even that kind of sounds quite alien. And I know you have the skeptics at home that will say otherwise. But cycling is so, because of its history, because of the 80s and 90s, Lance Armstrong, cycling is so aware of these issues now. And to the point where, like, I think that's probably one of the things that got me into anti-doping was that as a cycling fan growing up, you can't help but not have a semi-decent knowledge of anti-doping, because for that either, unfortunately, it kind of just went hand in hand. But no, like under the British cycling system, which is quite a new system, it didn't really have much of a legacy in that really dark period of Tour de France cycling. I was never offered anything untoward, was never pressured in any way. And if there are any athletes out there that have, the best thing you can do is support them, because coaches, support staff, anyone who kind of offers you kind of illicit gains, I guess, within that environment are liable to doping bans as well. So the doping authorities can go after support staff, not just athletes.
It's interesting because, you talk about short-term results physically, but when you think about like your career and stuff, the amount of people that have taken something and now been tainted, what does the rest of their career look like? They're literally going to struggle in any professional sporting environment as a coach, as an advisor, as a water boy, when they've got that next to their name of like, so, for me, it's just so important to look at your body and your career and everything with a long view, because the reality is you're going to be in your career for, 20 years as an athlete, 30, 40, 50 years beyond that.
Yeah, and from a fair play angle, that's why steroid abuse in sport is so important, because it's not just a short term fix. There's been a few studies that have shown that you'll get lifelong benefits even from a short period of use with steroids. And obviously, by the time it's well out your system, you'll probably still be feeling those advantages later on in your career, due to that short exposure. So that, from a fair play point of view, is really important that we get on top of steroid abuse. Sorry, what was the second part of the question there?
It doesn't matter, because, like, segueing on from what you've just said, so how does the UK anti-doping, aim to combat that? Because in theory, that's like, so I might sit here as an 18-year-old and go, do you know what, I'm going to take steroids and I'm not going to compete till I'm like 20 odd, and I'm just going to kind of use this period to kind of like get a little boost and they won't know and all that kind of stuff. Is there almost a way to detect that, or are you almost just hoping that ethically people don't do that? Because that's what you're saying there, is almost like a bit of a backdoor to a marginal gain.
Yeah, I mean, I guess under current testing strategies, we're only kind of limited to, that the half life and the metabolization of any substances in your body, and that is quite, sobering, I guess, on some occasions. What we're starting to see a bit more of now is, everyone will remember that Lance Armstrong used to say again and again, never fail the test, which is kind of true. But the way that he got taken down in the end was on intelligence-based information. In theory, he didn't actually fail his tests, and it was done on intelligence in the end. So there's a bit of an argument going on within the anti-doping community at the moment about how much validity physical testing actually has. I still think it's got a place. But yeah, obviously there's kind of that avenue open to someone who's willing to kind of cheat the system. But to me, that doesn't stack up with the values of what sport is. And arguably, I guess, if you're taking a kind of 2 year break and in your early 20s, that's a prime time when you want to be breaking through into the sport. So hopefully, anyone with that idea might have kind of missed the boat anyway.
So just looking at the UK anti-doping report, there's a couple of other really interesting statistics about the actual motivations when interviewed of people that are taking steroids. 51% said they wanted to improve how their body looks. 49% said they wanted to increase muscle growth. I'm assuming then there's another percentage of people that maybe want to improve endurance, that kind of stuff, because there's plenty of different steroids for different uses. A lot of people are essentially buying their steroids online, or they've basically met a guy at a gym that's done it, and it's kind of been that underground, I know a mate and check this forum online, that kind of stuff. So actually, Callum, like, putting the right information out there is really important, because otherwise we kind of get this Chinese whisper culture of like, my mate did it and he took this and he took that amount and he got it off Big Dave down the gym, and actually that never helps anyone, because the quality of information is just really poor.
Yeah, I know it's this kind of issue with kind of Chinese whispers, and quality kind of falls into recreational drug use as well as performance image enhancing drug use. But it's just a kind of sobering thought that if you think of all the controls that go into place whenever you get a prescription medication, you're getting it prescribed by someone who's done a medicine degree. You're getting it from a pharmacist who's also highly trained. There's so many checks and balances, and the kind of manufacturing standards which these pharmaceutical companies have to adhere to are just so high but yet someone's willing to trust, Dave in a lockup. You know what I mean? Down the road, it just to me it's just so alien, and just quite sobering. I think like, again, my main concern isn't necessarily about fair play; it's about people's health. And as I said in that earlier statistic about steroids use having a lifelong impact on your body, I think a lot of people can quite easily dismiss it, as being like, alcohol abuse or smoking, where your body can end up making a full recovery in some circumstances. If you're taking something like HGH and you end up with, massive hands and a massive jaw, or you end up taking steroids and you end up with psychological issues, or blood clots and heart issues like that, those things are there to stay. And it's just that thing. I think, like, is it really worth it, and is it worth trusting Dave down the gap? I mean, it doesn't. To me, it just doesn't add up. But maybe you're speaking to the wrong person to try and get a bit of insight into the motivations behind why people feel they need to do it, I guess.
I just want to clarify there. When I said Dave, I didn't actually mean Dave Crosland. It was just a name that came into my head, and I thought of, Big Dave. It's just one of those common names. It
is Big Dave. Yeah. Big Dave.
Because I'm a big fan of Dave Crosland, and he is really big, and he'd crush me like an ant.
Well, yeah, there is that side to it as well. Like, I'm a massive fan of watching Ronnie Coleman, like, and that whole kind of all the videos and stuff. I find him like a really good entertainer, but on the flip side, it's like I can't see him living that long. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of these kind of Mr. Olympia guys who, it's the amount of stress they're putting on themselves. Like, there's a really good video actually if you watch of Ronnie Coleman going through his supplement routine. And this is just like vitamins and minerals, and it's as long as your arm, and it just goes on and on and on and on, and you just have to start thinking, like, how much of this is natural, and how much it's going to cost them later in life. It's kind of maybe one of those guilty pleasures, I guess, when you do see competitions or sports that quite openly have steroid abuse within them.
I suppose we have to draw comparisons, because, like, if we were to look at athletes 50 years ago, they were still muscular, they were still strong, they were still fast. And if we were to look at athletes today, they are a bit more muscular, a bit more stronger, a bit more everything. Part of that is from technology, part of that is from enhanced training techniques, part of that is maybe from a little bit of supplement use, but it's going to be relatively minimal. But really, it's from the knowledge that we've acquired and been able to apply into kind of sports science techniques around the body. So I think people need to take almost a little bit of comfort in that and say, well, what is it that I actually want from my body? Because if I was to look at an athlete with quite archaic training advice, but applied hard work and discipline to whatever it was they were trying to achieve, they actually got a really, really good outcome.
Yeah, and I think it's quite important to remember just how, like, new kind of sports science or sport led by science kind of is. Like, if you look even, one of my favorite examples is the 1904 Olympic marathon, and they thought the perfect diet for this guy was egg whites, brandy, strychnine, which is a poison, and they also thought it was advisable to restrict his water intake. And obviously he ended up getting kind of downlead over the line at the end. But it's just, and they were still kind of doing this kind of thing with, like, brandy and stuff in the 50s and 60s. So to get to where we are now, I think it's quite reasonable to see athletes who are in better shape. They're going faster and going stronger because we're not putting all the kinds of shit that we used to, put in our bodies back then. It was all kind of based on feel and, what your mate Dave would say. It wasn't based on science. And so I think that's something important to remember. And, British cycling is famous for taking every single angle to the nth degree. We have people who are incredibly specialist in all areas of science, more or less, of which it can be applied to making you go faster on a bike, which includes, like, aerodynamicists, biomechanists, mechanical engineers, S&C coaches, physiologists, all that kind of stuff. Like, the key there to getting better is to make it more specialist in areas which are legal, safe, and ethical.
Love that. So I'm intrigued because I suppose a lot of the people that are drawn to take steroids as a whole are people that are probably suffering with a little bit of body dysmorphia. There's a big element of comparison going on. They've seen Big Dave down the gym. He's benching 250 kilos. he wants to get, close to that. Big Dave says, yeah, I've taken some steroids and I've done this, and you could do the same. And, I've got a mate who, can get it for you for 60 quid or whatever. What's your narrative, or have you had much exposure with young people in terms of like, how are you starting to frame this conversation to say, the beauty here is in your own journey. It's not about the guy down the gym that's bigger than you or faster than you. It's about you making yourself better. Because I think in young people, that's something that's really difficult to get across.
I think there's a funny thing in sport. I think everyone genuinely has their niche, and sometimes people have to kind of resign themselves to the fact that they're not predisposed to carry a lot of muscle. But that's okay. It doesn't mean you can't be successful in sport. It just means that you might be better at endurance events instead of it comes to like weightlifting or something like that. I genuinely believe that everyone's got some ability inside them to do something physical to a really high level. It's about finding a niche. I've found mine, and a lot of the other guys in the team have as well. But it's about having that kind of open-minded childhood, and I think I'm not always totally sure about how healthy the motivation is to go to the gym just purely based on aesthetics. I think if you go to the gym because you enjoy it, or there's a social aspect, or if you do sport because there's a competitive aspect, or again that kind of social community thing, then you're going to be less predisposed to kind of find yourself in a situation like you just described.
I promote sport so much, and I don't think the fitness industry or where I sit promotes it enough, because I sit in this kind of gym world, a lot of personal trainers, that kind of stuff, and like, sport for me is inclusive. It teaches you how to work as a team. It teaches you to have healthy levels of competition, and I would say the gym environment can quite often breed unhealthy levels of competition. And I always say to people, like, is cardio that you do that fun? Like, treadmill, whatever you're doing, is it that fun? Well, what if you went and did a sport? What if you went out rowing with a friend, or running with someone, or, you joined a badminton club or whatever? Like, now we're getting cardio, now we're getting teamwork, now we're getting skill, hand-to-eye coordination. There's absolutely loads of stuff, and I literally cannot promote sport enough. But in the fitness industry, it always feels like sport and gym culture is a little bit separate, and we don't kind of amalgamate the conversation enough.
I think a lot of the time what you might see in gyms is really kind of really bad sports psychology. So we were always told on the team, like, you never look sideways. You're always focusing on what you can control yourself. So if you think, oh, I'll do this because I've seen someone else do it, but you have no understanding as to why you should do it, then why do it? It's like, it's that whole thing of like, you just said, why are you running on a treadmill for 20 minutes? And I think there's just a really kind of lack of knowledge and lack of understanding as to, what are your end goals, and if part of that's based on aesthetics, then that's fine. If someone wants to lose some weight or get trim, then that's good. But it shouldn't be your sole motivation for being there. And also, you shouldn't just be copying people for the sake of it. I mean, if it looks fun and engaging, then whatever, go up and speak to them and chat about it. But to base your entire existence based on what the person on the bench press next to you is doing is really unhealthy.
Brilliant. So I'm intrigued. You used to be top-level cyclist. Your training was very driven towards the outcome of your sport. What does fitness and training look like for you now?
It's much more for fun. So I had this weird moment where I was kind of committing to go to the gym the next morning, and I woke up in the morning and I just didn't feel like it. And I had to kind of pinch myself a little bit, because usually it's a question you ask yourself, you just get up and you go. And it doesn't matter how tired you are, how fatigued you are. You had to go and you had to get through that gym session. And if you had a few extra pains, you tailor your warm up to try and get through that. But for now, it's a lot more about enjoyment. Like I go to the gym when I want to go to the gym. I go out on the bike when I want to go out on my bike. And I found that really, really good so far. The bit that I'm trying to get with the kind of more public gyms is to try and get that kind of community aspect in there a little bit. Like I feel I have a little bit of a complex kind of going into public gyms and having the background I've had, so I always kind of go in incognito and hope I don't really get pulled up on anything like that. But then by the same token, it took me a little while to get used to be back in kind of fitness gyms and seeing some form that would cause a high degree of panic in the British cycling system when you see people doing exercises really badly. So it's been a real kind of like learning experience, but I've been really enjoying it. It's the most I've enjoyed kind of training or physical activity in the in the last couple of years. So it's almost been a bit of like a kind of rebirth and reintroduction to that kind of world.
So how often would you train a week then? Because it sounds like your training is so fluid that there's not you don't say, oh, I'm going to do cardio 3 times a week or this. It's like, it sounds really fluid.
Oh yeah, but you don't realise how liberating it is to have been stuck to a regimental plan for 12 years and then to
Mm.
suddenly have that lid lifted. It's really quite nice, and hopefully I've kind of earned that fluidity, I guess. But no, and to back onto that, like, I'm a member of Pure Gym. There's other gyms available, so it gives me the flexibility that I travel quite a lot. I can go to whichever one in the country. When it comes to cycling outside in the outdoors, whenever I'm kind of turning into a bit of a fair weather cyclist. I'm not really a fan of going out in the cold and wet anymore and stuff like that. But I kind of stick to what I know a little bit at the moment. I'm still doing kind of Olympic lifts or kind of power lifts and stuff like that as well. Haven't gone near the machines or the cardio ones yet, but maybe when I get bored of them, I might dip my toe in the water.
I think that's refreshing for you to explain that, because I talk a lot about being pretty flexible with your training, because I think in fitness culture, people are great at putting pressure on themselves to stick to a certain plan. And you'll sit down with someone and they're like, oh, I tried to get to the gym 5 days a week and I tried to do this and I'm like, that's like, if all goes well in your life this week, you can maybe stick to that. Like, you don't have a bad night's sleep, there isn't stress at work, the dog doesn't eat chocolate and isn't sick all over the carpet. Like, so how about we kind of scale it back and commit to 2 or 3 sessions a week? Then if you can do a little bit more, then it's like, it's a bonus. But it's like people use fitness as this kind of anchoring tool for, maintaining their weight and kind of committing to something. And I think sometimes a little bit of flexibility and fluidity is like you said, a kind of a beautiful and freeing thing. But for me, sometimes people are almost too bound to the process and don't really engage with why they do it. And ultimately, you said you want to be fit, but you want to have fun.
No, but I mean, like, even when I did have that structured program, I did have to include a degree of fluidity. Like, I think if you do the same session week in, week out for months at a time, you kind of start to lose that stress element on your body. Your body adapts to knowing, okay, I've got, for instance, legs on Monday, I've got arms on Wednesday, and then I've got, core and Friday. Like, your body learns to kind of be quite adapted to that. But then if you suddenly mix it up, and instead of doing it in the morning and doing it in the evening, that's a real challenge for your body to adapt. And there's a few arguments behind that you might actually see bigger gains because of that. So there's a lot of arguments to say, like, don't be too tied to your routine and keep your body guessing a little bit.
Nice. Well, CrossFit seems to be doing that very randomly, and most people in the CrossFit gym are doing, all right.
Whatever, yeah.
So to kind of wrap this show up, UK Anti-Doping have done a great review. There's lots of information out there now. We want to make sure that people understand and are aware of safe steroid use. We want to encourage people to obviously not take steroids and pursue their own natural path, because there's a huge amount that your body could do without ever having to go down that route. Callum, where are the best places to find out this information? Where are we signposting people online?
Yeah. So UKAD Anti-Doping have a great website. They have an initiative called 100% Me. So the clue's in the name that there shouldn't be anything else kind of aiding your performance within there. So just gives you tons of tips as well. It's kind of being built on. It's a growing project that we've been doing over the last kind of 10 years or something like that. But ultimately, just you want to jump on that website, and there's plenty of information there that can help.
Nice. And if people would like to follow you and what you do on social media, where are you online?
All right, yeah. So I'm at Callum Skinner on Twitter and CSkinner92 on Instagram. I'm also started within 6 episodes into a little podcast myself with a teammate of mine, Philip Hines. So we do that kind of athlete to athlete thing, and we talk about stuff that we find interesting. So we had Chris Oy on the other day, and we didn't just ask him how did it feel to win gold in Beijing, how did it feel to win gold in London, how did it feel to win gold here. We asked him some stuff that maybe the journalists might not think about. So hopefully, if anyone's listening out there and thinks that might be worth a listen, it's called Pod Crash, all one word, because we have no idea what we're doing. So join up and have a listen.
Nice. And I like it how you're a couple of episodes in and you're dropping in some of the biggest names in sports. So, mate, it's obviously a podcast that's going to crush.
Yeah, I know all the other podcasters are going to hate us as well, because we've just got that kind of connection network to pull on. And I really wish we were more competent at this stage, but we're not. So we're getting there slowly.
Mate, a good microphone, turn it on and just go for it. And as long as
Yeah.
you're not talking about absolute drivel and the weather, then I'm sure you'll cultivate a great
No,
audience.
there's some good nuggets in there. There's some good nuggets.
Nice. Well, I'm going to have to listen to the Chris Hoy one because it sounds fascinating. So that is Pod Crash.
Yes, all one
Nice.
word, I think.
Cool. Well, Callum, thank you very much for your time. It's been great to speak to you. For people that want to be signposted to find out a little bit more about this information, go online and look up UK anti-doping. Probably just Google 100% me. Maybe tag on UKAD to that. You'll find some information. Honestly, it's important to know this kind of stuff if you're unsure. If also you're a coach and you work in the fitness industry, go and just even read the highlights. Like, just make sure you're aware of this information, so when clients ask, you can divulge this information. Because one thing the report said is that not enough gym teams and coaching staff are actually aware of any of this stuff. In fact, 70% of coaches and gym teams were unaware of some of the key statistics around this information. And if gym members and people are asking, and you've actually got people using steroids in your gym, then you should probably be aware of this information. It might not ever really be called upon, but I think it's important because actually it's appearing that it's a significant part of modern day gym culture. So Callum, once again, thank you very much for being an amazing guest. Thank you to UK Anti-Doping for setting this show up and sending me the report. It's something that I'm always happy to support because this is information that needs to be out in the fitness industry. I will see you next week on a Q&A show with Tom. And all you need to do in the meantime is have an awesome day. Goodbye.